I'm Mark Z, and you're watching Thorin, the best interviewer behind Travis Gafford.
Okay, this is going to be episode 7 of Elitists United, our LEC podcast. What I love about that is when I picked the name Elitists United, I just picked it because I wanted it to be something that, you know, made sense in terms of like me and veterans, brands, etc. But obviously, it did actually end up becoming some sort of mad meme magic because obviously now everyone in EU is a mega elitist because we actually get to see like, you know, a mid-game, like people actually like going and killing people when there's not 10 people trying to do it. Like all sorts of crazy concepts that the LCS doesn't get to experience, you know. They basically have 10 splices. And they just splice A, play splice B. Actually, you know what? I'll give credit. I guess Cloud9's sort of like
okay. I have to contradict you because
you know, come on.
There's not 10 splices because Splyce knows that there's other lanes than mid.
Right. Okay, that is the distinction to be made. Yes.
Yeah. I don't want to talk Splyce again.
And of course, none of us, because we're all like very respectful, none of us would ever suggest anything ridiculous like Splyce would straight tear up the LCS if they were inserted into it now. Never would suggest anything like that. That'd be disgraceful.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, of course.
Yeah, we would never do such a thing.
So, okay, I'll do the old thing that I'm trying to work into the show now while I introduce who the guests are, you know. So, if you go in the top right of the overlay, not for any specific reason, I just noticed I keep forgetting to put like the people in the right order, but whatever. It's on now. So, we've got Kold, Origen jungler, formerly known as Trashy. Actually had a bit of spice, I have to say, when he came on Narrative Wake. So, you know, but I've noticed, here's the thing, right? When I do shows, it takes a little bit of time to warm up to people, right? And figure out kind of their pacing. So what I've figured out with Kold, everyone bear this in mind, is maybe this is a jungler thing, I don't know, right? He is actually quite good at banter and he does have some fire lines. It's just he can't execute them instantly. What he does is you have to like give him a little bit of time. And then like if you just don't immediately, you know, cut in when he finishes, it's like 5 seconds later he'll come with the killer line, you know. Like that's what I should have done in that team fight. Fuck, right. Next time it'll all be, yes, exactly. I knew exactly where he was on the map. It's easy. I'll get him next time.
My smite was available. Oh my. Oh.
Exactly.
I could have smited that. Yeah. That's how it works. You forgot the best part.
Nowadays, you don't need smite anyway. You just use Urgots. They're way more efficient. They do more damage. Why would you need a smite? How can you outsmite an Urgot? You can't. Everyone knows that. So, okay, we've got Kold here, who's actually on a pretty good team now. You know, they've sort of worked their way into shape.
My team is really good, yeah, nowadays.
Yeah, some would say.
Yeah.
And then, obviously, we've got return guest for my shows. Hasn't been on this one yet. Odoamne from Schalke 04. No comment about his team. It's just a team, and that's all that matters. Like, it doesn't matter. Listen.
Okay, that's harsh. I mean, if he would have said that when I was in Splyce, I would have understood it. But now it's okay. Now there's bad times, but there were better times for Schalke for sure.
Yes. Yeah. Well, the thing is, obviously, we'll do like the usual tradition. We'll talk about both your teams initially, and then we'll go into the other teams in the league. So if we start with you, Odo, like, here's the thing. I want to ask you about this because I've referenced this on some of my shows before. But I actually used to get a bit frustrated when I would talk to you in the old H2K days because I actually always thought like, oh, what a great guy this guy is. You know, he sacrifices his own game just to make the team better. You know, he's a true, like, great teammate. But he must secretly know. Come on, man. You saw him at like season 6 Worlds. Like, come on. If you just put him on carries, he could be fucking sick as well. I thought you'd have that and you'd be like, yeah, you know, I just do it because I'm a good guy or like the coach needs it, you know. But then at the time, you actually were sort of, you had like Stockholm syndrome. You were like, no, it's right. I should sacrifice everything and everyone else should carry except me. It's like you were fully in that mindset. But then I noticed when you went to Splyce, you started to come out of it a bit. The team started to play around you a bit. But what the hell has been going on this season? Because earlier on, you were having all these great carry performances. Then a few weeks ago, they just put you on an island again. Like, as soon as I saw you go on, like, Vladimir or whatever, mate, that was like, I was on Suicide Watch. It was nightmare. What the fuck's that? You're not the Shark. You know, when I watch him, he's sick on Vladimir. You're just staying alive. You're a fucking BG. You're just staying alive. That's all you're doing. So, and then I saw them finally, they put you on Kennen, classic top lane carry champion, and you took over the game. What have we learned?
Okay, so yeah, I mean, Vladimir is useless champion, so I'm staying away from that one, and I'm going back on Kennen duty. But I mean, I don't know. Most of the stuff I picked was like good stuff, and it had like some sort of success in scrims, but I know he just lately, last couple of weeks, at least my impact in the game is not as high as I would want it to be. That's maybe because of picks and stuff. So we're gonna have to spice it up for this week and playoffs and kind of try to get myself to have more impact.
No, you're going to have to splice it up. You're going to have to get yourself to play a top lane, pretend you don't have a jungler, and just win the game. Like, if you do that, I feel like you've got the secret crack. That's the... Because, come on, we have to obviously talk about this factor. Like, Schalke is, it's been in a bad slide at the moment. So what
would you share a little bit what kind of champions you're going to play this Friday?
Exactly. Sure. Okay, so... Okay, so the thing that we felt that was really going bad is, like, Kennen was going good, obviously, but we have to kind of go back in the Splyce days and see what was working there. So I think if you leave Cho'Gath open this week, you're going to have a really bad time, yeah?
There we go.
And gang top, see what happens then.
Respectable.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, there's more tanks on the pipe, so you can't ban them all.
Well, the pick actually no one in LEC, and in fact generally LCS and LEC doesn't play, but when I've been watching LPL VODs, they play like a decent amount actually, is they play Gangplank in China top. They still play that.
But the thing is, like, China is, because of their thingy,
they're a couple
Chinese
of patches
New Year,
behind,
they're like 3 patches behind or whatever, but I mean, Gangplank is getting some buffs on the last patch, and with meta shifting towards, like Bruisers and Conquerors for top lane and all that stuff, Gangplank might have a place in again. Because before it was just mages and stuff, and he would just get destroyed in, like, the first 10 minutes, and he had no place. But now with Bruisers and all the melee tops and stuff, he kind of has a place again.
Right, Veteran, with an attempt at somewhat being delicate while phrasing this, because he is in the call, like, how do we talk about the problems Schalke has had to get some insight without, making Odoamne get defensive?
I mean, come on, guys, you guys can just go ham on me and blast me.
Come on,
like,
then.
Well,
you're blasting me anyway all the time. So
it's true. It is true.
I mean, this is the... Well, I haven't actually blasted Odo. I've blasted the way his team...
He's given you a lot of credit, actually, some weeks.
I think Odo himself has actually played laning fades out generally really well, unless his flashes burn level 1. And
that's true. That was a series of events.
But like, for example, even this Kennen game. So there was a Sylas game beforehand, which I think was against Vitality, where you were also basically the last guy standing on the map that had to carry, and the team wasn't playing very effectively around you. Because normally what I see of Schalke is that if you guys lose control around your bottom lane doesn't really know how to be effective. Ignar doesn't really know how to be effective. It seems to be quite an abusable point if you don't have bottom lane control. And even in this game, where you were like 10-0 on Kennen eventually, most of that came from playing really strongly around your bottom lane. When your bottom lane is unlocked and Memento and Ignar are able to go around the map and roam together, it's really strong. And in the Kennen game, you picked up 2 kills in the double kill by teleporting to your bot lane, for example. You picked up an additional 4 kills when Misfits made a really int play around Baron. The only real thing your team did to play around you was what I thought was still really good, was dropping the Herald and giving you free plating on the bot side. But other than that, Schalke don't really play around you very strongly. It's not like some Vitality games, for example, where Mowgli will just sit with Cabo Shard and they'll just play really strongly around that. It's not like what we have seen from Origen at least once. Like, we don't really see these kinds of games from Schalke. It's always a contest for bot side control. And until you guys show that you can play functionally around you on a really strong side laner, I don't think that you're going to be able to show those kind of carry games on a consistent basis.
Yeah, I mean, my point of view, and I mean, my teams, or like everyone's point of view, is like top lane is kind of an island. Mostly it's just being self-sufficient and scaling well, because the thing is the game still snowballs the most around bot lane, and say you do like some really weird map trade where like we get a dive top or whatever and our bot gets dove or gives up plates or minions and stuff. That's not really a good trade for you. Like, I might be ahead, but then I don't know, when support and AD comes to your lane and gets so much pressure on the map, you can't really do much. But I mean, it's just kind of like our identity, I guess, and it's kind of like the style I brought in for like most of the teams I was in, were just playing by myself, and when there's a bit of pressure going to my lane or like any resources, I can transition it into like kind of like a mid-game lead and stuff. But I don't know, it's something that we're like working in, and I think on stage games it's a bit harder to kind of emulate that, but I know it's still a work in progress.
So even then, like you say that like you bring this style in, I think also Ignar has also brought this style in on most teams that he's been on, for example, and you guys actually fit very well as a 5-man. There's sort of quite a clear, obvious place so you guys are going to go for even prior to any of the games starting, just on the basis of the roster. And you guys were a really good plug and play roster because of it. But like ever since Vitality kind of exposed what happens if your bot side loses control, that's always seems to be your weakness. So this is why like I praise you, and it's not so much about how like you've been playing. I do think it's just more that when it comes to mid to late game, by the way, early game Memento secures your lane really well. Even if he's making plays towards bot side, you're never really stuck in a situation like Soaz is, where his wave is just inting away from him and there's no recourse because Maxwell is just moving towards bot side now and it's over. Like Memento never puts you in that kind of situation.
I mean, that's also his fault, no? Like if Soaz in his lane or like he puts it in a bad spot, then ultimately it's his fault, not the jungler's fault. Like you can't blame your jungle for mismanaging your wave and getting it stuck in a shit spot, you know?
Whereas I do agree with that. They're currently like the top... I currently have a running theory that like the top 5 junglers in LCS right now are the junglers that basically are able to time it so that essentially every lane is ungankable. Every lane is in the good scenario, or you're in a position to counter gank that lane and you get the pushes out and back in.
I think
that
it's
topic is like...
street.
Yeah, exactly. That topic is very complex to go into because it goes.
That
both
topic
ways.
is very complex. That's why I'm trying to like simplify it.
Imagine I just sit in my lane like this, and I am last hitting, and the wave is crashing in my tower. And I'm getting dove, and I'm like, Jonas, you're not a top 5 jungler because you didn't look at the wave and see I'm getting dove.
If you're getting dove, it's not what I'm talking about. That's not what I'm talking about though. I'm talking about like if your wave is pushing away from you. And
but it's also my job. I mean, it's also my job that if he's next to me,
I agree, it's a 2-man thing.
Chill and help me push out.
But Memento is always consistent on this timing. Kold is always consistent on this timing. There are junglers that are not consistent on this timing, and you're never abandoned in this way. You'll not probably notice the effects. You've actually played with really good junglers, to be honest.
From my point of view on this topic, it's just you have to. It will never only be the junglers. The idea of doing this, it can also be laners, so it goes both ways. But I think teams that you see do this regularly, where they will always make sure that laners will not get punished when they have a bad wave, are teams that are planning well and have good communication. So
no, I agree with that.
It goes both ways. I'm sure Odo is one of the guys that communicate well on top lane. I remember playing with him back in the day, so I know.
That was like 4 years ago.
I mean,
we were really bad.
Well,
we were really bad.
I mean,
it was 3 years ago for me, and I remember that. Like, I know that you're doing it on your end, and I can see Memento's doing it on his end, and I'm saying you're not being, like, completely left on an island in the early game. These issues that I'm saying kind of exist in, like, a mid to late game area, not in the early game.
I mean, I guess, praise to Jonas, because he's listening and he's doing the right decision, because I remember some junglers in my career where I would say, I need help because this is not going to be great in a minute, and I would get ignored and I would end.
Yes.
So,
and there are 5 junglers right now where clearly the systems are in place, and they're not necessarily all on like the top 5 teams. Like there are some junglers on the lower tier teams, like Selfmade is the really obvious one, for example, where you still see this level of consistency on it, even if their laners will then sometimes enter. Like you can.
It's just an impossible topic to go into if you don't know the context of it.
I mean, you can go into it, but it would take up the whole 3 hours or 2 hours.
The only thing you can see is if teams are like doing it correctly, and then if they're actually working well together, then you will see them usually never make mistakes in these parts of the game. So that's just how it is, at least from my point of
view.
Yeah. Okay. What do you think of the Schalke team called? Because obviously you're playing them in the next game, and if you beat them, that might be the end for them, mate.
Is it? I mean, I'm not too sure about exactly.
They'd have to lose to Rogue.
But we have to win 1 out of 2, and then we're kind of...
Okay.
Yeah, because say the G2 thing matters, because people have been saying that the PromiseQ change, if G2 lose with that might make it so people leave, or that like this really kind of fucks up the standings. If Misfits go 2-0 because of this change, but you go 1-1, you win because you have 2-0 tiebreak over Misfits.
Right.
Yeah.
So you make it in anyway.
Apart from all those fun numbers and stuff, that's all cool. But what do I think about them? Like, I remember when we started the split, Schalke was one of the teams we actually practiced quite a lot against. And I, just looking at the players, I thought all of the players were very mechanically skilled and good individual players. The only question mark was their mid laner adaptability. I didn't know much about him. Only seen him from solo queue, but I don't judge people too much from solo queue. There can be a huge difference from how they play on stage and stuff. So right away, I think it kind of showed that this was players that were highly skilled, because right away they were mostly winning games of just snowballing games. And I think we saw like Ignar and Upset winning a lot of 2v2 matchups where they just completely destroyed a game. But as the season kind of progressed, we have seen them lose a little bit of that, because the other team's fundamentals just got better. So if your fundamentals and the practice you get are working towards you being more on the same page, both in terms of laning, in terms of gameplay, then you will not just magically get these leads. And then if you don't have these leads, what are you gonna do? And I think that's kind of where I see Schalke struggle a bit. The split is that when they don't get the leads, they don't seem to understand properly how to play their compositions or how to play against the opponents. So I think it's just it's a new team. We have to understand that as well. Like, it's a new team of 5 new players together, and when you are used to winning a certain way, then if that suddenly stops working, then you have to go back and look at the fundamentals of how you play the game and learn. Maybe you didn't have that much knowledge to begin with, and now suddenly you maybe took like one step back, and then maybe as you get more fundamentals and work better together, then you will be even better. So I think they're just dipping right now, but maybe in next week they will be back and be super good. But from what I've seen, it looks like a team that needs to work better together in order to their players to shine, and that's just my opinion.
Should I comment now? Is it my turn or what?
Sure.
I mean, I don't know how you can. I didn't really set you up for any.
I thought he was going to come with, like put a bit of sick banter in there, but he's been very complimentary, Odo. You've obviously made a good impression on him.
I think Ignar is really strong early. I think Memento is really strong early, and they always have been. I think Odo's always known how to play laning phase really well. I think Upset's one of the best up-and-coming ADs, so they were always going to have like really strong early games from the off.
It's actually funny because in the start, when we were struggling a lot, we were getting quite destroyed by Schalke in practice a lot, and we learned a lot of things from what they were doing. I don't even know if there are things they're doing on purpose, but I mean, you don't know. You can watch it, and then we were actually learning a lot of things from them, how they were playing, especially around their bot lane. So not a lot of teams we have played against this split has taught us things specifically, and Schalke has taught us something. So I have a lot of respect for them. I think they have good players, but it just, at least for the later part of the season, it hasn't really seemed like it came together. So that's how I see it.
Yeah, I mean, he was kind of right with the stuff he said, that like, with all the new team, blah blah blah. I think the thing that kind of like bites us most in the ass is the fact that we have like, rookies. Well, rookie in Abadage and Memento was like not on great
just
teams.
Not super experienced, sure.
Yeah, like even though he played as a pro for a while, I still consider that he's kind of like rookie status in a way, because you weren't like in places where there was like a really good coaching staff established, and your fundamentals of the game are like really good, and you can just like learn them fast or like change them fast on like kind of change your identity, while everyone on Origen is kind of really experienced, maybe outside of Sheriff, but he's AD carry, so whatever.
I don't know if you could say that about myself even. For
you, I mean, not so much, but I know you.
Because if you can't categorize Memento as that kind of guy, you can't really put myself in there as well.
Wait a minute, you went to Worlds.
I mean,
Memento we'll get to the fucking Worlds Academy before that happens, mate. What are you talking about?
I mean, we can talk about that World run, but we were so bad at that time. Like, it was crazy. Like, we only had one way of playing the game, and that was like playing Kassadin and Malzahar and scaling top lane and playing 1-3-1, and every other team at that time was so bad at
Exactly.
that we would always reach level 16 and then we would just win the game. Like I remember it was back when we played a series against Odoamne as well on H2K.
He doesn't remember it much. I mean,
It was the Nar.
Speaking of Gangplank, yeah, you remember Gangplank, that old champion? I see what he means. It's not a good champion, really. Don't bother playing that guy.
But
it's funny how I still get flamed for the Gangplank pick, but I feel like no one ever watched that series and see what happened that game.
I've had to defend that multiple times. Actually,
I had to play 5 games of the same jungle matchup as well. I'm pretty sure like we played Rek'Sai against Gragas every game as well, so it was like it was almost the same drafts every game, and I get like a small headache just from thinking about this series, but
at least you won.
My point of it was that back then we were just average, but in a league that was even worse than average, you know. So when we got to play international and when we got to Worlds, we were just like we were kind of just playing the game. I feel like we didn't have that much like strategic insight, and it wasn't like personally I was not really taking that much from Worlds, like in terms of knowledge and stuff. It was more just it was a little overwhelming, I think, because we were just right in there, you know, like no one expected us to go there, and we just got sent in there and got destroyed, but we got a win from it. But it was more, as I said, it was more overwhelming than actually a learning experience. So I don't also think that's why it didn't translate into the next year, that suddenly Splyce, even though we went to Worlds, we were a top team in Europe. I think after that we got knocked out in quarters the two next splits. So I think that kind of says a lot to it. So maybe I had a little bit more knowledge, or maybe a little bit more things to work with compared to Memento, but I don't think it's like that much difference.
I mean, Memento has seen 1 playoffs and has only had 3 splits in the ULCS, 2 on Rockout, 1 on Giants, and you've had like double his splits, and you've had playoffs almost every split, and you were in the finals once, and you went to the World Championships. I'd say you have somewhat of an experience advantage over Memento.
Maybe I'm thinking too much, like 2 years back.
You're just too focused on your UL period, mate. You're out of that now. Just like Memento, good times have come, you know. I mean, didn't you hear what he just said? Memento spent his time on Rockout and fucking Giants. That's like being the Count of Monte Cristo in prison for like 10 years or something. Then you get out finally. You're like, right, time to fucking live and get revenge on the motherfuckers that put me in that prison.
I mean, it would probably be even worse to be in prison with you, right? So I could see worse things in life.
Listen, all I'm going to say is there'd be one way to run in prison, mate, and you wouldn't be in charge. So just leave it there. Everyone just leave it there. No one touch that one, because, you know. Sorry, no, I'd take care of you. I'd take you under my wing, you know. I'd be sort of like Mithy. I'd say, listen, don't be too harsh on him when he fucks up. He's with me. He does everything I say, just like Mithy. So there you go, right? The analogy works out. Yeah. It's weird. When you're unicorns of love, you looked all right, but you look way better when someone else controls your brain.
Yeah, I mean, I need to be managed in a nice way.
Yeah. The thing is, in a way, though, junglers do, right? Because on the one hand, obviously, junglers do decide certain things they do in the game, but I have noticed that actually a lot of the junglers who are super gank heavy aren't the ones who are just shot calling all the shit they're going to do. Like, you know, they kind of like very much, they want like input from the lane all the time. They kind of like, it's kind of like, for me, the analogy I use is like on American nuclear submarines, you have to have 2 people, the captain and the co-captain have to both turn their key at the same time to launch the nuke. That's like how it feels like a lot of the good junglers operate.
I mean, yeah, kind of, I would say so. It's sometimes it's like you just go with the flow and then you see good opportunities as a jungler and then you go for it. But I think a lot of it comes down to like planning and how to set up things. I mean, for example, I can only talk from how we do things, but many of the plays we make are well prepared. It's not something that just happens randomly. It's a very wave specific, and we go into detail a lot. I like to go a lot into detail about like how specific timings where we can do stuff and stuff like this. So I feel like as a jungler, you really need to put a lot of effort into not only learning about what is jungling, but also like what are lanes and how do people want to play their lane specifically, and what are good timings to punish. So
yes.
I'm blessed with very nice teammates that are good at sharing their thoughts on how to play specific lanes. So that definitely helps a lot, and I think it goes both ways always. I don't, at least from my point of view, it will always be a two-way street.
Even though, obviously, I thought his point there was a very good one, you know, as like an abstract point about the concept of jungling and how it progresses. I do like to imagine in that sense, like the way he described it does sound hilarious. Like there's like you know, like when you sign up for those encyclopedias when the person comes door to door, the concept is you pay and they send you a new one every month, you know, and like each one's, you know, different set. It's like book one of jungling. What is jungling? You just learn like, here the camps are. But then it's like, you know, a lot of people haven't got to book two because book two is what are lanes. That, like he said, so a lot of junglers haven't got to that second book yet. But if they do, that's when shit starts popping off.
I mean, let's be real. Like anyone can go from camp to jungle camp and clear their jungle camp. You know, like that.
Sure.
That's easy. You know, but my point is just that you need to bring in as much.
Oh, he's died.
Oh, that's not good.
He's about to reveal the secret to jungling. Yes. Literally, like Mithy just fucking like cut the power with an axe or something. Like, no, you don't tell them all the shit I taught you. Oh, there we go. You lagged out a second, mate. Wait a second.
The usual comment from him will be that he will always question mark me when I go from a buff and not straight to bot lane, you know, because why would I go straight to bot lane when I can give him some breathing room, you know? So
yeah,
that's the usual discussion on the OG team.
Okay.
Does NateDOhDoubleG participate a lot in these discussions? Because I know Miffy's really smart.
Mate, NateDOhDoubleG has actually lost one of his books in the mid lane series. He lost book 2. What are junglers? Like he just gave up on him for a few years. You know, he was like, after Jankos, I'm just done with him for a while. Like I'm just playing counter picks every game. This is a 1v1 lane. This is Howling Abyss, right? What is it?
Yeah, I mean, all of us do. I think it's also, I mean, sometimes he takes charge on some things that he wants to happen, and sometimes I take charge on things that I want to happen. But I think there's a lot of misconception about NateDOhDoubleG being like very, very selfish, and sometimes like at times there was this meme about him hogging tower and stuff like this. But I actually enjoy playing a lot with him because he not only understands his lane very well, but he also understands jungle very well, and that is probably another thing where laners sometimes don't understand how the jungle works. But he has a very good understanding of how the jungle is and how to play around me as well. So I have not really anything bad to say about him because he understands me well, and we try to understand each other. And I think that's probably the most important thing, is that there's not always a right and a wrong, but you can always find the right together, and that's what we do.
Okay. Right, should we talk about some other teams then? AKA flame other teams. So one of the things about this show, right, is one aspect that's been a little bit boring for the first like 6 episodes is almost every time we're talking about G2, it's just like the same story, because if you look at all the games, it's the same shit. It's just them do whatever the fuck they want, pick anything they want, win the game, ha ha ha, like who had the best banter as they were killing everyone, and then like, yeah, are they going to win? Yeah, probably. And then like that's the end of the discussion, right? But now they've actually lost some games. They've actually started to bleed a few. And they've lost already. Obviously, they lost the game to, well, you know, this team from like Denmark or Spain. They can't quite decide which, I notice. You know, they lost one to them, so give them that one, I guess. Then they lost to this team, or what they called, I don't know, some shit team. What were they, Splyce or something? You know, yeah, they managed to take a game. So, what are the criticisms? Yeah, what are the criticisms of G2? Because obviously they have been very good, but what are the gaps that they've shown?
Okay, I'll go first, I guess. I really liked Kold's point about how well-timed they try to make everything, because I think the big thing with G2 this week had nothing to do with Mikyx, which they're obviously trying to unload a lot of the blame onto for, but actually had to do with their solo laners and how they were working with their jungler. There were minor things in like the early game against Splyce where, like, for example, Trinket Ward and Pink Ward was up on caps when he moved through the blue side jungle, and if they just dropped that down, they could have actually contested blue buff. Wonder went for a trade that he didn't have to go for when he had full wave control and just ended up dying off of it. It made no sense. But one really big thing that Origen do really well, that G2 really failed at, was how they set up to go for Drakes. Like, Origen is really, really good at the specific timing in which Alphari with pressure will roam towards mid, and then on that wave push, they will then immediately be able to start the Drake. It's always on the exact same immediate timing. It's really well done. I don't necessarily think they should go for every single Drake they go for, but when they do, it's really well timed. When G2 did it versus Splyce, they did it a full wave behind when they should have done it, and gave enough time for Renekton to move down towards the mid lane, group up with them, and have a 5v5 team fight without ever even having to burn teleport. Because they went a full wave too early, they had to go for another mid lane wave, and in this timing, Splyce are already grouped up, they've already cleared the mid wave, and now they can just contest as 5v5 a really easy team fight comp. And that was what ended up giving Splyce a really huge advantage in that game. And this has nothing to do with like Mickey X's issues. This is something strategic that other teams are doing, like Origen, much better than them. And that's actually something that could be really worrying for their playoffs chances.
From my point of view, G2 are just maybe going a little bit too relaxed at times lately. The way I see them is they have good players all around, but right now they are so used to winning. They're so used to winning in just very convincing fashion, where they just stomp teams, that it's hard to learn strategic things during this period. And if you start playing against better opponents, then you will run into issues where you haven't seen this side of the game before, because you're just used to getting 10k ahead or 15k ahead, and so I think with time they will reach those things, maybe more internationally, but should also be in the playoffs, because I think we have some good teams in EU that are starting to ramp up and can contest them. So right now they're probably a little bit too loose. I think teams are catching up to them, and they will, if they don't start like fixing some of the issues they have. I guess it's hard for them with the issue of Mickey, where right now they are not practicing as much as they can. I could easily see other teams starting to beat them, because surely they say they have a lot of strategies in their book, and they're just waiting until playoffs to pull them off. But I mean, I don't really buy that. They're a good team, but they're not some immortal team that will just
I just want to see that bot lane now,
mate. We played against them last time, and they were nothing special. They didn't do anything that we wasn't expecting. So for me, they're just a solid team. But if you were to ask me if we could beat them, I would easily say we can beat them. So even
I'm definitely intrigued to see the bot lane this week. Like, I want to see if Perkz has gone from Mickey X to fucking PromiseQ. Well, let's see how much he has leveled up then, because that's like when you play a game through, you're like, so isn't that challenging? I'll play it on nightmare mode, try and get all the skins and everything. Like, fucking hell.
Jesus.
Well, actually, Veteran, you can probably confirm this, because obviously you played on HQK.
I think this narrative is so bad. Like,
no, I'm about to ask. Listen, wait.
The one with the wrist or what? The issues? They can't scrim and stuff, or what?
Oh, right. What were you referring to there, Kold? What's the problem?
I was referring to the narrative that Perkz is a bad ADC because he has Mickey X as his support.
No, it's just that we can't know. The point is we just can't know if he is or not, mate. That's the point.
Yeah, I mean, sure, but I mean, I've seen how Perkz plays. I think
it's like Bill Gates' wife, right? For all I know, Bill Gates' wife might be a genius. She might have done a lot of great shit, you know. But she is Bill Gates' wife. I mean, the reason she's rich is he has billions of dollars, isn't he? Like, that's the point. It's not that she can't do anything. It's that she hasn't sort of been on her own to prove it, you know. So I'm with you. He might end up being brilliant. He's a sick player. But put it this way, we're going to find out when he plays with PromiseQ.
True. I mean, for all we know, we don't know if he's even going to play. You know,
could all be a bit, yeah. Could all be a bit. The thing I want to ask, I want to just quickly ask Veteran something.
Oh,
right, what is like the official version of the story about PromiseQ then? Because I heard from people within HQK that he actually, because I said to someone basically, like, how does he keep getting on all these teams if everyone says he's so bad? But I was basically just told that, like, supposedly, like in solo queue or off stream, he is supposedly like good, and that's how he gets all the trials and gets through and gets in other teams. He just has some sort of issue on stage or something. Does that sound accurate?
Okay. He is very good in scrims. In my experience, he was actually playing quite well on stage, but he's set in his ways in some certain things that you can't quite get him off of that do have big ramifications in the early to mid transition. And that's honestly being my only like really big fault with him. We did actually get him to playoffs. I'm going to forever put on my CV that I'm the only coach to ever get PromiseQ to playoffs.
That's toxic, bro.
Well, I mean, it's true though. But I never really had like, as a teammate, he's actually like a really, really good teammate. As a player, I wouldn't say that he's obviously not like Mickey X or anyone like that. But my criticism of him has always been that he's just being rather average. He's a good laner. Sure. Sometimes he's a really good laner. He lacks a bit in the macro department on early to mid transition phase, and that's not something that you can really easily correct from him because he's quite stubborn about certain points in that regard. But he is really good for his AD carry. He's a really nice teammate to have around as a person. He doesn't really interrupt discussion or anything, and he's always there to do his job. And I never really viewed him as like a substantial flaw with our team, for example. We didn't have like that strong a roster, sure, but I could never think, oh, if I just had a better support player, we would be winning all of these games. It was never really that case. Even in cases like the Fnatic one, where like they burned our Flash level 1, but Odo was a victim of that, and I wouldn't say you should boot Odo now.
Okay.
Like I never found him.
I appreciate it.
I never found him bad as a teammate. I never found him to be like the biggest problem as a player, and no one else has either who actually watches the game and understands the game. He gets a bad rap because he has been on all of these low tier teams, and that has.
He also didn't understand the power of memes. Like, if you're going to be a player who has a few bad games early in your career, don't call yourself PromiseQ, where people can literally just make like, haha, PromiseQ. It's like, that's too easy for the memes. Like, make it harder. Pick a different name. Pick something totally
I
neutral.
didn't think I had to change my name.
That's true. That's true.
You know why?
You could have been a bowler and just accept trashy and just be like, fuck the haters.
Okay.
The difference is, in your case, if you'd have gone really sick, it would make it kind of cool that your name's trashy and you were really
yeah. I mean, it goes both ways, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. Here's the thing. PromiseQ has had a lot of teams where he's ended up with like really low scores, but the reason that has been the case is because he's the only player who has been on a team that has had really bad scores like that. That has then been recommended to other teams. Because all these teams recognize that he is not the problem. Other people who are genuinely bad and will genuinely hold their team down at that point don't get a second chance. PromiseQ has this record because people will keep hiring him because he is not actually the problem on most of these teams. There have been far worse players on a lot of the teams that he has been on. And
I think it's good.
The only reason he has this losing record is because he keeps getting a second chance. But he doesn't get a second chance on a really top-tier team that can take last year's top-tier support player like Mickey X, like you guys have now nabbed Ignar. I'm pretty sure Misfits really wanted him back. Or even
Bro,
like
they have Gorilla. How can you want anyone else in Gorilla? Misfits lineup is superstar.
I did rated that roster pretty accurately, I want to say, by the way. This guy keeps getting second chances, and that keeps snowballing his record even lower. But he's only getting the chances because he was the good player. Any other player who is genuinely bad doesn't get a second chance, and it makes him look worse and worse. But you can't say he keeps being on really bad teams as a point against him. It's just that everyone recognizes that he isn't really the problem with him.
Bro, bad publicity is good publicity. Like, look at Thorin's Twitter. He's legit roasting people 24/7, and he doesn't care. Whatever publicity, good publicity.
Somewhat true.
It's true.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to defend him as a player and say, well, because it seemed really asinine to me that people point out that he's being on multiple bad teams as a point against him. Like, he would not get a single other team if he was genuinely this bad. You don't have other players like this because other players who are genuinely that bad do not get on other teams. It makes no sense to me why this goes
in Europe, at least. I mean, there was Kiwi Kid's whole career.
Yeah, but the whole of North America gets made fun of.
That's true. They have a lot of recycling going on there. Ironically, they don't get rid of the trash and turn it into something useful again. They just recycle it. It's like one person takes the trash to his neighbour and says, you can have that for a while. And then he takes it to his next neighbour. You have it for a while. And eventually it gets thrown out. Hopefully.
And then they buy a brand new trash can from Korea, and then it's over.
Exactly. Yes. And then
no one's making the Kold joke. Okay. Oh.
No. Well, something like, if they wanted to get really trashy, they'd bring over the guy who didn't beat TSM. If anything, he was a traitor. He was trying to help fucking Bjergsen get out that group that one time. He was doing his darn best to help him, but still couldn't do it. To be fair, he did beat RNG for them. So
Yeah, no, if he hadn't...
that's a favour right there.
Yeah.
I have a
favour.
50% win rate against UCI. Just can anyone
Not bad.
beat that one?
Not bad. Not bad. Yeah.
That's really insane.
And it was against Mata as well. So I mean, the list goes on. The list goes on. MLXG, you know, like.
Exactly.
I mean, at this point, you know, you might as well categorize me as one of the best players in the world. So.
I was
Flip
about
a
to say
coin,
as
see if
much.
you win against Uzi or not.
Right, what about this then? So, I don't feel like there's that much to go into on the G2 topic, because as I said, like, it's just, the story is they lost a few games, and then now they're changing the support. What about...
I think
go
meta
on.
changed a bit also for them. From like
Yeah,
something
what?
comfortable with.
It's a team that I feel like at this point they have something to prove in the playoffs. So we will just have to see how they fare in the playoffs. But I mean, everyone will look at them as the favorites, and I think that's fair. But let's see.
Kold, if we want to talk about narratives, right? A classic narrative, obviously, is that when junglers have all their lanes are really good, they in theory will look at their absolute best. So it's hard for people to gauge Jankos this season because he's had that benefit. He's had an amazing team in the game, and they haven't been in many spots where he was like, you know, 2 losing lanes or a matchup that's really a nightmare to play. How would you evaluate him as a fellow jungler for this season?
I mean, definitely much better split from him this year than last year. He seems like it's a team that fits the way he wants to play as well. He's a player that I think at times like takes too many 50-50 plays, but it works out on this team because all of them are just committed for that. So he's around players that wants to play the same way as he wants to. I think on prior teams, sometimes he would be on teams where they didn't really fit 100% the way he wants to play. So he's playing really well. I also see him being one of the guys that grinds the most. I think if you look at some of his solo queue accounts and stuff like this, he is playing insane amount of games. So even though he's maybe one of the older guys or whatever you want to call in the league, he is still grinding hard. It seems like he's very motivated. So he seems good. I mean, he had that game last week where he was very mad about himself, and it was probably one of the more rough games to play. Like I was feeling a little bad for him watching that game because it was not pretty, but it is what it is. I think he's solid. Like I have a lot of respect for him because he's one of the junglers that has been around forever and always been a part of the discussion of like. Is he the best even, or is he like top 3, or like he has always been one of the best junglers in the league. So when you play against him, you need to make sure that you play at the highest level you can do, else he can just roll over you. So solid player, and I always love to play against him because he pushes me to be better. So it's a fun guy to play around.
Veteran, how would you evaluate him this split?
Okay, I don't really actually have much to add to that, to be honest. Why do you think he pushes you, actually? I want to ask that for sure.
Because we're different. So I mean, there's no clear way like you have to play jungle a certain way. But we play a little different. I think as I said, he takes more chances and gambles than I do, and I think the jungle role in 2019 probably goes more towards gambling at times. Like we see some of the best teams like IG, they take a lot. Ning likes to take a lot of gambles.
Sure.
I think, but also on the other hand, we see players like Tarzan. Maybe even the best jungler in the world at this point doesn't take that many gambles. So I think it's just interesting to play against because you need to have a certain mindset when you play against him because you need to be ready for what he's gonna throw at you, and it will not be just some boring.
Oh, he's dead again.
Oh, you disappeared for a second there. Say whatever
back.
You were finishing off again. If you had
I mean, my point is just that we are different, and I think that's why it's so entertaining for me to play against him because we have different views on how to play. I would assume, and when it clashes, I think usually I actually play really well against him, but. I mean, that's just. I have a good feeling when I play against him, but he's unique in the way that he approaches the game for sure.
He's always struck me as one of those guys that plays off of like feeling, if that makes sense, as opposed to coming in with like
I used to say intuition
rigid game plan.
Yeah,
but he's one of the few guys who does this, but what their instinct is also happens to coincide with what the optimal game plan would be more often than not. Like it's kind of like a rare talent to get in that sense, and that's always the feeling I've gotten from him.
That's why I always use the term intuition, because to me, what it is like it's the idea is the reason you're getting like a spider sense that tingles is like your subconscious basically is able to process way more information than your conscious mind is. So the idea is like in theory, you know, it's like the mega mind's working, and then you just get a sense of like, I should probably do this now, and if it works, you look like a genius.
Which was the game you felt sorry for him on? Was it Carthus or Lee?
Which I felt sorry for?
Yeah,
which was the Carthus game?
No, the leasing game.
It was the leasing game. Okay, because there was that went a bit poorly if he like landed the Q in that place. That would. It
was almost like he was like playing like he didn't want to hit the Q. Like, I mean, I'm not sure. Like, it was.
I mean, Mowgli had a BG that game as well, though, because he kept getting the knock up wrong. He kept like knocking up the minion and knocking back the guy. So like the two ganks mid and the gank bot like was the exact same thing there. Like he didn't seem to get how the knock up mechanic works now. I actually had to go to a practice tool after that to check if it prioritizes.
You need to be very skilled to play Rek'Sai. So.
Yeah, you just right click, and when you're under him, it will automatically do it for you if you're having difficulty. Yeah.
Exactly. I used to think that until I saw Reign overplay other champions. But enough about that. Enough about that. Right. So anyway, exactly. Speaking of, well, especially when my favourite was all the narratives. Like, you know, he was just the god jungler, he knew everything. He was like unreal. It's like, weird how that didn't work out when he was on team Liquid and CLG, isn't it? He sort of wasn't any of those things. But anyway, speaking of Flame from Twitter, I will introduce Misfits just by reiterating something I did say on Twitter, which is, because I think it's a fair comment. It's obviously a bit harsh, but it's fair. At this point, right, you know, in America, when you have a milk carton is made out of like cardboard, and on the back, if there's like a kid gone missing, because that's such a tragic thing, they put the kid on there, like, you know, Billy missing, like age 7 or whatever. Like, I feel like Misfits should have one of those with Max Law's picture on it. Like, where is this guy? Like, look, we honest guys, we've got his contract and everything. We signed him up to play. Where is he? Like, you know, like he's been replaced by some sort of an alien or a clone or something. What's going on?
I really don't know why everyone's flaming Max Lord though. Like.
Who are you flaming then? Who are you flaming in Misfits?
The whole squad is just.
Oh, everyone! Come on.
Yeah, everyone. It's everyone's fault. I mean, it's true. It's just that they're really, really dysfunctional. I feel like they're all really big egos and personalities, and you just have no one to manage them. Like, who's gonna manage them? You have Jesse to manage them, and now Hussein is back, so maybe he does a better job because he's like more of a like, I know he's kind of like a bigger figure than like Jesse is, because I don't know, when I look at Jesse, I see him as like a fellow player or something. But like Hussein, like I don't want to talk shit to Hussein, you know?
No, exactly.
But
he's keeping his doors open.
Yeah, I mean, bro, I have to be polite here. You never know who's watching this podcast. But
problem is, top lane's the one role they're not going to be replacing it. So, you know.
I mean, he did go 0-14 in 2 games.
He had a BG this week.
Yeah, he had to play Vlad as well. Now he knows how it feels.
Yeah, he knows how it feels. Now I went through that. I know his pain. Exactly. When he lost Vladimir against us, I was like, it's one. He's going through the same shit I am, same phase. But I don't know. I just feel like they're just really dysfunctional together, and they don't really enjoy playing together that much. And I think their whole like style of playing doesn't really like, you know, mesh well together, because I look at that team and I'm like, okay, who wants to make a play? And there's no hands up coming, you know, because I mean, Soaz is like a lunatic in lane. He is like fine in lane, but he's like kind of like roaming around the map sometimes and making good plays. But I feel like Febi is kind of like controlling meta, and he just wants to like have a stable laning phase. And bot lane is maybe a bit of a psychopath if they get like Draven and stuff. But outside of those like conditions, I just don't see who has like big balls on that team to pull the trigger and like be decisive with the play. That's kind of like the big issue I see there, because they're all really good. I feel like individually they're really good, but when you put all of that in a team, you just don't have kind of like that star power or like killer potential, if that makes sense. I just feel like there's no one that wants to kind of like step out of their comfort zone and do what's needed.
Sure. It's like they actually have a concept. I think it comes from Korean esports, but unfortunately it hasn't really like permeated the West, where the term they use is team color. And it's supposed to be a concept that's kind of like a mixture of like style, but then like who also like the personnel is. And so it's like, that's why it's called like color. It's the idea like you blend all together into this certain team color. And so the concept here would be, it doesn't matter if individually all these players at one point in time were really good and were even top players. It's like when you put them all together, what do they become overall? And if in this particular case, it'd be some sort of like, I don't know, fucking beige or something, wouldn't it? It's like, it doesn't really work.
Yeah, like if you look at Caps, like, when you think of Caps, you think that this guy is just gonna 1v9 a game and just like make stupid plays that are really, really good, but they're like really risky, and he is willing to take big risks. But Febiven is like the polar opposite of that. Like, it doesn't mean that he's bad. Like, he's probably like just as good as Caps or whatever, but in a different way. Like, his lane will never go to shit. This guy will never lose lane, and he will, most of the time will win lane. But he's really lane centric, while Caps is just like, he just wants to make plays everywhere, you know. And that's what Misfits is missing, I feel like.
I don't think that should come from Febiven though. Like, I don't
it's just like that's kind of like the best comparison.
Yeah, just an example, reference.
Because I don't think like anyone in particular is the problem, you know. But you need someone that wants to be like Caps, you know, in a way.
I do think though that like the keys have been given to Maxlaw for those kinds of like engagey plays, and every time that he has had those keys, it has not gone very well. Like, did he even hit?
I guess that makes sense. Yeah, I guess you can put the blame on him for that, but you don't know the inner workings of that team and what's happening, you know.
Yeah.
What about this, Odo? I'll say it this way, okay? I think part of the reason why Maxlaw gets harshest criticism now is, first of all, he has had some games that were pretty bad, but then more importantly, most of his career, he got it the other way. He got the benefit of the doubt because he was on teams without all the sickest players. So then when they did really well, everyone was like, wow, he must be doing a great job as a jungler, best jungler in EU, etc. So if you then get, on paper, way better players, like you get in theory like players at every role who've all been like stars, played internationally, now you're supposed to do what we were talking about with Jankos on G2. Now it's supposed to be, if anything, you're supposed to have your best split, and it's, if anything, the question would be like, is it just because of the players, is it him? So if you have all those players, and admittedly I would agree with you, I think they all kind of like they have too much overlap in a bad way. Like, you'd want people who are more distinct, I'd agree, but the problem is, if you then have your worst split with all the best players you've played with, it's going to look bad no matter what. It's going to be hard to explain that away, you know.
You make a good point. Like, if I would like play with like a team, like the best team I would probably ever get, with like a lot of like really big names and like people that, you know, are really, really good, I would like, even though like I established my way of playing, I would try to like do my best to like adapt and like make myself like what the team needs, especially because, I mean, it sucks for jungle, but jungle is just like kind of the versatile role where you kind of have to fit your team's needs, and it's the same for like support in a way, which is working with jungle. I mean, I guess the responsibility falls on him, that he could have maybe like, you know, done more to like kind of fit the whole like lanes and stuff. But it's, again, we're going back to like the two-way street where like the lanes and jungle just give their own input, and they kind of need to reach a middle ground, you know. Because maybe like he wants to do those plays, but the lanes are just stubborn and they don't want to give up a minion to get like a play going or whatever, you know. Everyone might just be like super focused on that, but it's hard to tell.
Well, I agree with that. There's that, and then there's like missing your skill shots straight up. Like, it's not just like.
Well, I didn't pay attention to that, but if he does miss skill shots a lot, then yeah,
he didn't have to. They were never going to hit you in the first place, so it was completely fine for you to ignore that. But like, I mean, whereas it's really tempting to always go in on like the whole like Maxlaw element, SOAS did have a really, really bad Renekton game. Like that isn't something you can put on SOAS at all. I mean, not on SOAS, on Maxlaw at all. Like, he had no business being up in the wave the first time he died. Not quite sure why Broxah was top side for the second. I think he just gave away a free ocean, and that Aatrox didn't need him there at all. Wave was good for him, and he can solo kill at that point anyway. But SOAS did really like let that game fall out of his hands himself, and I absolutely love the guy. But we can't like blame Maxlaw solely for every single game or something like that, which is the temptation. And Maxlaw is not having a good split. That is true. But like the first game at the very least that they played this weekend, I wouldn't entirely put on him. And then the Schalke game, there's definitely far more in like the Maxlaw played this poorly camp. Febiven didn't I mean, there's a lot that's being said about like the Righteous Glory build that Febiven did. I'm not sure if like changing the build path there would have won them the game or something. I would have preferred for him to just go Rylai's into a Void Staff or something instead. But
right against us, but he played Yasuo against us.
No,
The
it
Rise game
wasn't.
was against
He
other
played.
people.
The Rise game was the other game that he played, where
Yeah,
it was against
but he played
Fnatic.
yeah, but he played Yasuo against us.
Yeah, but I wasn't talking about that.
Oh, apologies then. I'm sorry.
All right, well, now that we've
The
cleared that
Yasuo
up.
game. So this was actually setting up for the Yasuo game against you, but I fuck it. Okay, I don't even remember what my point was. Okay, the point with the Rise thing though is that I saw criticism being leveled onto Febiven, partly due to LS, who was saying that Febiven actually solo lost them the game by not winning the 2v2 top, even though the situation top only occurred because of SOAS in the first place.
He
But
did miss a lot of fucking abilities top, though.
Huh? Oh,
He did completely whiff when he went up there.
It wasn't necessarily that he was missing, but it's that he decided to W the Aatrox that was an ultimate instead. And if he just held that, because Lissandra was TPing in the middle of them, W the Lissandra immediately, it was a free kill under Lissandra, Aatrox would be out of ultimate, and then they kill the Aatrox.
Okay.
It wasn't necessarily like a missed thing. But outside of that, like, I didn't think that that game was his fault, even though there was criticism being levied at him pretty hard for that. I do think that against you guys on the Yasuo, yes, he did have like a pretty BG. Like he literally watched Alistair walk in front of him towards top side, and still decided to like clear the wave straight towards you guys and into it a bit. Like he didn't have the best game against you guys on that. So it's not entirely on Maxwell again, but there's definitely far more of an argument there because Maxwell had all of the keys to win that game for sure, and they just weren't really able to pull it off.
Kold, you've been suspiciously quiet on this topic.
I mean, I'm listening. I'm listening. You know, like
Okay,
I think it's so hard to go too much into Misfits because when you look at the players, this should be a team that is at least able to contest against most teams in the league. But I think at least like the last couple of weeks, you really see the pressure hitting them. I feel like it really looks from the outside like there's a lack of confidence on the players. Like you don't see Febiven or Maxlaw in their prime like missing so many things in game, like making questionable calls, not being able to be decisive. Like these are all things that they have been when they're playing well. And I think when you look at the team from the get-go, we often just look at what happened like the past couple of weeks, but if you look at some of the first games they had some really solid games. We even lost both games against them. They had the game against Fnatic where they just had all winning lanes. Surely Fnatic had a bad draft and stuff, but it seems to me that when they have a very, very clear game plan that is easy to follow, and then they're good at doing the steps. They have always been that. I think that's maybe more like a Maxlaw thing. He has always been that kind of jungler that when the game plan is very set, he can follow it. But I think this team just lacks so much creativity. Usually there's a lot of shit given to SOAS, but at least he's like trying to do stuff. So I have respect for that. But it just seems like when things are not rolling for them, and especially like the last 4 weeks, it just looks like a team without confidence, and I can see why. Like everyone from the outside expect them to be a top team in Europe, and now they're struggling to even get to playoffs. So I think the pressure is high. I don't know exactly what is happening behind the scenes, but it's a team that looks, you know, even from the outside, you only see them play on stage and you see their player cams, but we also get to see them walk around backstage, and it just doesn't seem like a team that is functioning. I don't know why. I don't know the insides of it, but all I can see is that it's just not what should be happening with those kind of players are just not being utilized, and it's hard to say if it's a player issue or if it's a management or coaching issue. But I think they should have so much experience in their roster on how do you manage to put a team together to play well. And if they can't teach each other that, then for me at least, it looks like a player issue, because I can only talk from like personal experience, but when I'm with people that knows what they want to do and how they want to execute games, then the game just flows. You know, like you go on compromise sometimes, but the game flow is always there because you have so much experience, so much knowledge, and even when it goes downhill and you lose some games, you still are able to solve the issues if you have the right mentality. So for me, it looks like a player issue, and maybe there are too many egos on the team to make it work. But I have a lot of respect for all the players because we have seen how good they can be, but it just doesn't seem utilized.
Like I don't really like trying to put all blame on something, but I do think that the way the team was set up and brought together was just wrong from the get-go. Because there are definitely teams where all of these players can have really strong performances, be really impactful, and show themselves at their best. Every single player on this team has been on a really strong team in the past where they've done so. But you do know coming into it somewhat what the function of each of these players on the team was, at least by eye test. And you do know that Maxlor and Gorilla were not like the engagers of their teams. Even Prey was doing that for Gorilla at the time. And Maxlor had Ignar at one point, who was able to do that really well for him. And that was when Misfits were at their best. That was when Misfits weren't just a win lane, win game team, when they had Ignar able to get them from the early to mid transition period. And I think that, whereas I wouldn't necessarily say it's, I don't know if like the coaching staff put this team all together or if it was like management higher up, but the way this team was put together really does have to be put in question. The people who were doing that, I would say if you're going to blame anyone, it would be them, because all these players can be good. They have shown that they can be really, really good. And when we say that like Maxwell's not having a good game, Sewa's had a really bad game, Febiven made mistakes, it's not necessarily saying that like these guys are your problem. I think the way the team was put together was bad from the get-go.
Let's also be real, like they still have a week left. If they manage to somehow magically get to playoffs and play different, then we would sit here and talk about them like they failed, but maybe they're accomplishing something else. But
well, I'd put it this way, Kold. Of the teams that are remaining, nobody in the playoffs wants to see Misfits grab the last spot.
Yeah,
nobody. You know, you'd much rather that was like SK or something like that.
Why not?
I wouldn't mind.
Yeah, I don't think people hate Misfits. I think people hate Vitality, but
the point I'm making is like they're an example of a team where, because they have really good players in theory, you don't want them to like sneak into the playoffs in case they figure shit out and actually become really good in the playoffs. I meant along that narrative.
What about Fnatic? Then people love to hate Fnatic. You love to hate Fnatic, Thorin.
It's not about
but Fnatic's already making the playoffs, mate. I mean, of the teams that can still grab a spot.
Not necessarily.
What's going to happen that's going to stop them?
They're in the same situation as Schalke.
I mean, they're 1 win ahead of us, but if they go 0-2, and then, I mean, there's a really low chance.
They play against G2, and who's the other team?
Splyce.
You guys play
exactly the same
Rogue.
as Misfits.
We
Misfits
have Origen.
Fnatic play the same opponents.
I mean, SK has really hard week also. The thing is, there's like, Misfits has G2 and Splyce, something like that.
Yes.
So Misfits has it really hard, and SK has
Rogue and Vitality, so not impossible.
No, Excel Vitality, something like that, I think.
No, SK has Rogue and Vitality, according to the Gamepedia at least, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, you can say they can make it, but it's a really low chance. It's kind of like unrealistic. And I think if they're kicking someone out by making it, it would be us and not Fnatic, because like they're closer to us than like, I don't know. The stars really need to align for Fnatic to be out. Like there's a really low chance.
Did Misfits Yeah, go on.
I mean, Misfits has, I think, only if we go 0-2 and they go 2-0, because in head-to-head they're 0-2 against us.
No.
And I'm not sure what their record is against.
They have one less game overall in
it's
the league.
1-1 with they're 1-1 with Fnatic. So if they equal Fnatic, there's a tiebreaker. If they equal you, it's not a tiebreaker. So they need you to lose to Rogue. So in my head, they're more likely to end up against Fnatic than against you.
Yeah, something like that. But I don't know. It's not even about hate, but I feel like even if Misfits would have this meteoric rise, that if they make playoffs, they're gonna be really insane. I mean, things like that don't happen in 1 week anymore. You would see like steady growth. It's kind of like what happened to Origen, you know, because Origen was not doing that great at first, but you know, ever since like week 3 to like week 8, they kind of got like, I don't know, 70% win rate in LCS. So you see this like constant growth from week to week, but Misfits, you still don't see like growth, you know, you still see like coin flip 50-50, either they win or lose, and you don't see something that's gonna like give you this faith that if they make playoffs, they're gonna be really, really insane, you know? Like if Origen was in the position, you would be like, oh fuck, I don't want Origen to make it in, because they're like getting better and better every week, so they can stomp us in playoffs. But Misfits just doesn't give us that vibe.
Even though that was great analysis, by the way, if you were just a guest on a show, I'd say you nailed it completely. The only thing I will say is you have got to be careful because you have basically just implied that there's no way Schalke gets better. Just saying. I'm just saying. I didn't say it. It was out there. I'm just saying. You know.
I mean,
Can I make a point in defense of both teams?
This guy, he's just the nicest guy this episode.
Yeah,
fucking hell. Cold's trying to win L's all over now. Okay, come on then. Defend everyone. Come on.
If you look
he is a fucking jungler. Look, he's helping his lanes get back inside. Fixing, he's resetting for you. Come on.
If you look at Fnatic, this split at least, they had probably the most terrible weeks from the get-go. Like I think week 2, 3, 4, something like that. They were absolutely terrible. And then from one week to another, from what I've heard, they practiced the same composition or couple of champions for the whole week. And then they went on stage and they had a game plan and suddenly they knew how to play the game. So it's not that far away because I would agree with you that this would be the point on a team like, if you look at a team like Rogue or a team like
Excel.
Not even Excel. I think they're showing some signs of some good things, but when you have players that in the past have shown that they can play at a high level, then it's more if they are mentally ready to take that step. Like I think it's not now like for them it's like not so much about like gameplay wise and stuff like this because they have it in them. Like it's not that far away.
You just gotta activate it.
It's more about exactly, and that can happen in a week. Like, even though you might say that it's unlikely, obviously, it's less likely than a team that is slowly progressing. But it can easily happen when you have players with the caliber of Misfits. So it can happen, but it looks kind of difficult.
I mean, if it would have happened, it should have happened, you know, kind of in the past. Like with Fnatic, they were like put in the position where they really need to change something, and they really changed something. They started like stomping everyone and playing really good. But I mean, if you want to change something, don't change it in like week 9 or LCS. It's kind of LEC. Sorry, I don't want to go. Yes. I don't want to confuse us with our plebs.
Exactly.
But if they like, I would want them to like change something and start becoming like really insane, you know, just for the sake of competition. But it's sad that if it's something changes, it takes them 9 weeks to change it because it's kind of like late. They're late to the party.
Yeah, like I agree with the concept. I'm not sure. I think I agree more with Odo though that it's not likely to happen. But I think the reason it's not likely to happen is that there were always the players on Fnatic who could play a certain way. Whereas I think that unless you're just going to give SOAS permanent engage champions from now on, there is not really a place you can pigeonhole Misfits into where they are going to have a strategy that will guarantee them some wins, to be honest. That's like it for me. Gorilla and Max are not going to become different players in a week.
We need to see SOAS lock in the Ornn, then it's
true. He needs to be back on a dog, and then all is well for Misfits.
Exactly. That is the breaking case of emergency. You know, the red box on the wall.
Dog.
And there's just Cho'Gath inside there. Yeah, exactly. Pulls out Cho'Gath.
They've won on Jarvan. They won one game on Kennen, and then they won on Sylas when Sylas was permanently stealing a Jarvan ultimate. I'm just saying, just put it engage, and then it's a win. So there you go.
Right, Kled top lane then. So there's 2 teams, Odo, that we're going to talk about now, and they both get hard flamed by totally different sets of people, and yet they're both tied second in the LEC. So Vitality get flamed because people are like, they're not playing real League of Legends. What is this shit? They're just cheesing all the time. But they win games, and then the other team's obviously Splyce, where everyone's like, what the fuck? They're not even doing anything. How do they win without doing anything? And it's like, people hate these 2 teams for totally different reasons. They're like, obviously complete polar opposites. So how did they win all these games? Because they clearly must have something, right? They must be good on some level.
Well, Vitality is just really good at pulling the trigger. They have like really aggressive lanes, and surprisingly their macro is not that bad in the later stages of the game because they're really creative when it comes to like killing the Nexus and trying to like some bullshit backdoor, and I feel like that's like the highlight of their macro. But But I also think that they got better than last year on the stuff they were doing in mid game, where they would just go 5 mid all the time. Whenever there would be like a chance, they would go 5 mid. I feel like now they're playing more proper than last year. And
I like the way he says they. You were in the team.
No, I'm talking about Vitality.
Oh, sorry. I thought you switched to Splyce there. My bad.
No, but I mean, I think they're just really decisive, and their players are not bad. Their macro is still not like the most on point, and I think they're still a bit unconventional in the way they play. But they're just really decisive and dedicated to the plays they make. So I think that just makes them really like good, because they still have this element of surprise that people don't expect the stuff they're doing, especially around like the top side. They're like, people are still like, nah, for sure they're not gonna just give up all the waves mid and come kill me top, are they? And they come and kill you top, and then the game explodes like that. I mean, it's just kind of like their trademark style, and people still don't know how to exploit it. And I mean, I think they're just way better than last year, and them being second is kind of like justified in a way, because I don't know, they've shown a lot of growth from last year, and I think Mowgli is a way like bigger improvement than the stuff they had, whoever they had last year. I think it was
Kickers at the end, yeah,
and Gilius at the beginning. I think Mowgli just brings a lot more stability. Like, I still haven't seen this guy end the game on stage. I think he's pretty good so far.
We have to understand that there's a slight bias when Odoamne says this. Like, Mowgli obviously camps top every game. So
of course, yeah. Cabo's back on his bullshit from about 3 years ago.
I wish someone camped lane for me at one point in my career, but no one ever wants to camp for me, man. We can kill him here. Bot lane needs help, I guess. I'm just gonna base you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to it. What Odo is saying, they have been showing some good things. It's kind of hard for me to evaluate 100% because last time we played them, when we beat them, they played with their substitute mid laner.
Yes, the mid laner. Yeah.
It's kind of hard to say that we are better or whatever because we beat them, but.
I mean, your coach did try to say it, but don't worry, I hard flamed him for like not pointing out that Jizuke wasn't in the game. Like, come on, homie. Get rid of it. But anyway.
So I feel like their strategy seems like a little one-sided. Like it's pretty much the same most games. If you actually like watch them play, it's very, very top focused, and I feel like that can be good once in a while, but I don't think it's like it's not the best way to play the game. I think you need to probably spread out a little bit more your resources. So they're definitely a team that you have to respect because they play a certain way. But I don't think they're like some super team or anything like this. I think they're just like slightly above average in the league. But they're definitely a team that I feel like it's a team where if you get to prepare well against them, then they will be less of a struggle, and they really can explode in best of ones that we play. And we even saw like the game against G2 this weekend where they had a huge lead, but they didn't even know how to win the game with the lead they had. So
yeah,
they show signs of brilliance, and they show signs of what the hell. I think that's the best way to describe it. But as they're even without in the standings, so we have to give them a little bit of credit, and I think they're a team that you have to respect.
They had a hell of a better start than you did, though, and now you guys are like equal in the standings. Like, I actually think, disregarding the fact that obviously the mid laner was different, and you don't have to flame me for this, I actually think that the strategy that you had coming into them was actually like the right strategy people should come in against Vitality. It's basically really difficult to force anything on your team, and you didn't give them any of these really easy early tempo windows that they always latch onto really, really well. And then I think the point you made about the fact that they couldn't close against G2, I actually wanted to come back on something Odo said. I actually think that was a really bad game for Mowgli, because I actually think that the reason that they lost that is that instead of playing really hard for Baron vision when they should have, especially when they had TP advantage, he instead decided that they really needed to gank bot side, where Cabo Shard was, against the cleanse rise for some weird reason. And that didn't work out very well, oddly enough, and then they basically lost all tempo that they'd previously gained on the map. So it wasn't just a knock-up, knockback thing. I actually think that this really strange map play that they decided to do actually ended up inting that game away. And this just kind of tells me that their fundamentals still aren't really there. And this has always been a really weird team, because like I can't really judge Mowgli like I judge other junglers either, because he's now in this weird vitality system where what they do with their junglers is their junglers just sit on the opponent's jungler for as much as they possibly can. And that's basically how they seem to understand jungle. And then later on, after Cabo Shard has like gotten ahead, they'll try to play really hard. Cabo will just book it down bot side, and then they'll lean towards him, and that's basically how they try to close out every game. But that's like a system, and every time their fundamentals are challenged, they do lose out on games. And like versus Origen, they couldn't do anything. And I think even if you change the mid lane to Jizuki, I still don't think they'll be able to do anything against Origen, because if you don't give them these really obvious windows, they can't really do anything.
Yeah, I mean, I even think we played pretty bad that game, but yeah, I don't want to. I would rather just hopefully get to play them when they have Jizuka, and then it's easier to judge.
Sure.
And I think even Yamato went out and said that the specific comp they played was not something they're used to, and I think I kind of agree with him. They were playing like a poke comp with Zoe and Estral, and usually you see them playing more like Bruiser stuff, fighting champs where you can kind of just fight your way out of things instead of playing for the perfect setup in certain scenarios. And they seemed like they had no clue whatsoever how to actually get in that setup to be able to win. So that was why it seemed a little easy for us. But I think we didn't really play that well, even though it might have looked like from your point of view that it was an easier game. So yeah, I think it's just you have to respect the way they play. It's unique at least in Europe. Maybe G2 is like a little bit of the same, but I think even G2 doesn't play that heavy for top lane. There's not a lot of teams that play this heavy for top lane in overall in the world, I think. So
sure.
That's why it's quite unique. So I'm excited to see how they do in playoffs.
I think they're a good litmus test. Like, if your team has a big hole in it, Vitality will ball right through that and straight to your nexus.
Absolutely. Like they will destroy you if you're not ready for you. If you're not ready for them. So
sure.
It's important to be ready.
That's why I'm interested to see in the playoffs if they can actually win any series. Because I kind of agree. To me, they're kind of like the gatekeeper of the elite teams. Yeah. Like, if you can beat Vitality like consistently, you probably can win the LEC rather. If you can't, you probably shouldn't be winning the LEC. It's logical in a best of 5 series.
I mean, you saw last summer playoffs when I think was it Schalke against Vitality, where Schalke beat them because they just had better fundamentals. And they couldn't deal with that. And I think it will go a lot of the same ways. I see Vitality having a lot of struggles against the likes of us or Fnatic in a best of series. But I mean, that's just that's just my opinion on these things. Like it can vastly change, and meta can change, and there can be different things that can have impact on it. But from judging from their play, it's their weakness, some of the fundamentals, and that's where you can really hit them.
Okay. Right, now let's flip it the other way and talk about Splyce.
Former Splyce Odoamne, please.
2 Splyce players here. Got Kold as well. Yeah,
no, but that's not fair. It was completely different when Trashy was
True. There. It was a different team, you're right.
I mean, they got their old logo back, so he's more relevant than I am.
Okay.
They upgraded that tank player.
They play much more similarly to how they played when Odo was on it than they did when Trashy was on it, probably because most of them are the same.
But, I mean, I think just coaching staff helps them a lot. I mean, I still don't think they're like the strongest laners in like bot lane, mid, or top, like at all. But I just feel like, I feel like Xerxes is hard carrying that team. Just because I don't know, I might be a bit of bias, but I don't think so.
Keep going, yeah.
I just think their coaching staff got a big upgrade from last year with Duke being head coach now, and I just think Xerxes got way better, and their lanes seem like I don't know, they seem stable. So there's not really any big hole that you can exploit. Like maybe they lose lanes sometimes, but I don't know. I think they've just been like kind of like steady in like the games they've been playing. I mean, they still went like 1-1 every week, and then they got a 2 a week, and then they're 10-8 or something like that. But I don't know. Like they were middle of the pack, and all of a sudden, I think the top teams just dropped some games, and then suddenly they're in second. But I think they're weaker than OG and maybe also Vitality. I still think they would be like 4th or 5th if by the end when like everything spreads out. But it's definitely like a surprise for me because I don't know. I just feel like they fixed a lot of their stuff in the last weeks and they've been playing pretty solid.
Come on, Kold.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I kind of agree, but and so one of the reasons why I think they're solid, but not better than that, is the fact exactly what Odoamne is saying, which is for him it looks like that the jungler is the carry of the team, and I think usually if you look at top teams or the best teams in the league, you can't really be the best team if your jungler is the carry player. And so you might disagree on Griffin, but I think that's
going to be an outlier if you've got the best jungler though in the entire world. You know,
I even disagree to some extent that he is not the main carry of the team, but that's a whole different story.
AD carry is insane, and their mid lane is really good.
My point is that I feel like if you don't have the carry potential from your actual carry roles, then you will have a hard time when you play against the teams that have superior players on those positions. I think a clear example is like when you look at a team like TL, or if you look at a team like G2, for example, even though Jankos is shining, it's not that he is the star of the team.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like sometimes it's a little bit too much for Splyce, that Cersei is power farming so much to be the carry of the team. And that has good and that both has good sides, but also has some bad sides to it.
Sure.
So I think they're overall solid. Like it, as Odoamne says, like it seems like all of their lanes are playing smart and don't just like lose it mentally throughout the game. So they seem always like a team that they will put you in a position where you have to beat them, but they will never lose the game. If that's I don't know how to say it.
The typical Splyce from last year.
And it's challenging. Like if you don't know how to push your lead, then they will take advantage of it. But for example, when we played them, I think 2 weeks ago, they were not doing anything the entire game, and then we knew how to win the game, and then we won. So it's I'm a little bit of question.
Yeah, but the line you say
I think
there,
they're the gatekeeper. Honestly, them and Vitality are the gatekeepers because
in different senses, obviously.
Both teams like test you in a different way.
Yes,
because
this is like one of those kung fu movies, right? The first boss has to teach you like early game, you know. He's like doing all the crazy shit you don't expect. Then the second boss is the old guy's blind and everything. You think, oh, I'm going to wreck this guy easily. But then every mistake you make, he just punishes. You're like, oh, fuck, how do I beat this?
Vitality are the unstoppable force, and you have to prove that shit doesn't exist. And then Splyce are the immovable object, and you have to prove that shit doesn't exist. And if you prove that neither of these two exist, then you're a good team. So if you're against Splyce, they really won't let you end the game, but they also won't close out the game themselves. And like going on something that Odo said, or that you two were both saying, that like Xerxes is really farming up to be the carry. This guy has like the highest, by a country mile, by the way, like GD at 15 of any jungler. Splyce are top 3 in GD at 15 as a team, yet they have the highest average game time in the league by over 4 minutes. They are the only team in the league that has a higher average game time than North America's average game time, which is 36 minutes versus their 37 minutes. These guys cannot close out games. Their mid to late game is complete dog shit. The game versus G2 was a really good example of this. When they got Baron, it was so horrible watching them try to play with it, because you had Renekton like hovering in blue buff area. You'd have Lissandra like pushing the wave and then lean towards mid, so LeBlanc got to like clear it and they got to defend mid really easily, and they got like 2 towers, and Irelia got all of her level at disadvantage versus Renekton back because they completely ignored bot side, and she just got to farm all that up. Like, they have no idea how to play mid to late game out at all. But they do actually seem to have some really good game plans coming in. Like, I really liked their plan with the Vayne pick versus basically I think what the plan was here. I did actually talk to a couple of them afterwards just to confirm it was that Vayne basically versus the Yorick would if they moved the Vayne into side lane mid to late game versus Yorick, that's actually a really strong way that you can play out versus a Yorick that will outscale most top laners at this point. But it took them ages to get this setup properly done. Like it took them forever to get this setup. Because they had the concept's really good, but they have no idea how to actually play out mid to late game properly. So even when they have really good plans, it takes forever for it to come to fruition. Even if they get solid leads, which they do way more often than not, and more often than a lot of other teams, they don't know how to play it out. So if you understand how to close out the game at a fundamental level, you'll beat Splyce. This is what really annoys me about Splyce, though.
I think, just to end the Splyce topic, I think like some players that are not being talked a lot about on the team that are kind of like unsung heroes a little bit. It's like I think people like Vizisachi and Humanoid both. If you compare like Splyce to a team like Misfits, they're actually doing stuff. Like
I
look
agree.
at Humanoid and Vizisachi, they are not afraid to pull the trigger. I think we have seen plenty of games where Humanoid was playing Lissandra or LeBlanc, where he's being creative and doing stuff and forcing fights, and he's not afraid to go in. Vizisachi is not afraid to go in. So they have players that are willing to, as like we say, for example, some of the teams that are lacking in that department, like they actually have players that are willing to just be the aggressor and force stuff. And then the carries, like for example, Kobe looks really good in the later stage of the game because he has teammates that are willing to sacrifice for him in the fights. And we often see that, I mean, this meme about they're so good in the late game, but it's more that they're actually pretty good at knowing when to take fights and actually executing them instead of just standing like we see this so often. I don't want to hate too much on NA, but we did see this too often in NA where there are two teams standing next to each other and maybe they start like dancing with the cowbell, like let's see who attacks first. But when I watch Splyce, at least they understand pretty well how to execute fights and what kind of positions they should be at to force it. I don't know if it's a thing with the splicing coaching stuff or something that, or if it's just like the players that are enforcing these things. But I think those should be mentioned at least for like the team, because it's not only like a Cersei on Kobe.
For sure. I think Kobe is like really stable, and I think he's doing like a really good job given like what he has and what he can do in those games, because he's always like stable. For sure he doesn't like win lane all the time, but I know in the later stages of the game he's always like super reliable. And I agree with Kold. I think Vizi and like Humanoid, even though like there might be int, but at least they're willing to fight and do something for the team. They're not scared to like pull the trigger. And I think the way they chose fights is like
they have some of that East European blood, like you can relate to it.
Yeah. Why do you think I play tank so often, bro? Like no one wants to fight. I have to drag everyone in. Let's go, guys. Let's start the fight.
not like us Nordics, we are not. We were.
Let me just make a plan here and. Fuck that. Let's go fight.
Okay, the way that they set up fights, I actually disagree with that being good, because like it's really easy to catch out people when you do what they do, because they just dead lane a place and then they group up as four and they have no right to be doing so. They lose so much XP and gold that if they play against a team like
obviously.
you are going to be 2 levels ahead. It's not good. Like it's just not a good.
Obviously, like we discussed it, their mid late sucks or whatever, and their setups are not that great. But at least they want.
Like I just don't think it's good the way that they do it. I think
I never said they played the map well. I just say that they have players with balls to force the fight. And
if your turbo is behind and you force the fight, then you have balls.
Yeah, they do this when they're turbo ahead. That's what really annoys me about them. Like, because they have. I agree when you say that their top and their mid is really good as well. And you guys signal out Kobe, but I think that Humanoid is legitimately the best of these rookie mid laners. I know that you have Abadage there, but I legitimately believe Humanoid is the best of these rookie mid laners, even better than Nemesis, even though they're winning right now. I think Vizisachi's having the split of his life. I think Norscaran doesn't get as much love as he should, because he had that int Alistar game, and he had one int Borm game. But he has had really solid performances, particularly in lane as well. And I think that this team, with Xerxes, who everyone has rightfully praised, can win a lot of games purely off the power of their players there. So it just really annoys me that even when they are ahead, they're not able to play out properly. Because I think there's so much potential in this, and this is a roster over Vitality that I think could actually upset teams in the playoffs. I think especially if your mental is not all there, these guys will catch you out at the wrong part with their grouping, and then they will end up winning the game off of that. I think this is like the dark horse team if there is any going into playoffs. So it just kind of annoys me that they couldn't be more, and that they seem consistently to not want to be more. So yeah.
I just want to know this, because no one's even thought of this question, but it's actually such a good question. I wonder what the fuck happens when Vitality scrims against Splyce.
I mean,
It's a good question, right? It's like
Vitality should win every time. Just want to say that they should win.
You'd hope so.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, they should win every time versus Splyce. They are a stylistic mismatch for Splyce, because if you ever give Vitality a way to get ahead early, they will generally shut down the game before you can do anything. The way that Splyce play is Vitality's dream to play against, and yet they lost in playoffs when Odo was on there. But what I want to say with you, by the way, when they switched to playing with like hard carries top, they played around you better than Schalke have played around you thus far. Like when you started picking out Aatrox, Camille, and all of this.
The problem is, what happened was, right,
Splyce,
Odo said to the coach, Peter Dunn, he goes, Peter, can't you just fucking allow me to play the game top lane? And he misheard. He thought he said, can't I just get allow in the top lane? And he gave me like one game, and he was like, right, that's
actually,
you know, the Romanian accent, you know.
Actually, that was such a great game. I remember playing Ilaoi.
Fun, yeah.
Oh god.
And my juggle is bot side, and I'm getting dove 24/7. Now defeated the purpose of my champion, but I mean we won, so I did my job, didn't I?
But Odo, that's not just on the jungler. That's also on you. Remember?
Oh,
it's on everyone. Yeah.
I guess I was just really bad at Ilaoi.
Sure.
Which is kind of true, but whatever.
That's what I love about junglers, right? You would think, like, I'll give credit to Gilius. At least when he's, like, I mean, to be fair, he shit talks when he's behind as well. But at least when he was in position to win, you know, he did shit talk a bit. But, like, the thing is, most junglers, like, it's like trying to get a fucking banker who's done some stuff to admit, like, the banking system's corrupt. There's no way he's going to do that. Like, he'll say the other guy did a bad job, but, like, he'll have to say, like, the system's fine because, you know, his own shit depends on that. So, like, every jungler knows one day they will be on a team with not that great players, and they're going to need to use all the same excuses that they would have to like dismiss now to wreck the other junglers. They have to like always leave the back door of like, well, you know, it's never just the jungler's fault, and it's, you know, it's all about how the team plays, and you know, who even knows what the jungler was doing? Who can know what communications there were? It's like everything becomes really like philosophical with them. Like, what can we really know as humans? You know, what is the idea of what is a jungler? What are lanes? You know, like everything becomes very like sort of French in like the 1950s or something. You know, very philosophical cafes, smoking.
Then you wake up from a nightmare where all the enemy lanes were pushing and you can't play the game. That's how it works.
Exactly. Yeah. Echo Fox, I call it. But yeah. So anyway, bringing it back. Right.
I mean, this was the perfect plug for you to shout out your new YouTube.
That's true, yeah. If you want to know why Echo Fox is bad, well, I mean, to save you the time of having to watch all the LCS games, because no one should have to do that. There's about like 11 hours of that shit or something. Just watch my video and then just write them off forever, as I have done. Beautiful. And just, here's the thing. You can do both at the same time, guys. You can, on the one hand, like Rick Fox as a human being, while also agreeing his League of Legends team's hot garbage. You know, the two things aren't mutually exclusive. In fact, I would say the two fit together. Yeah, he is. He's cool as fuck, yeah. I mean, what he's done to League of Legends is practically a fucking war crime, but aside from that, you know... If we ignore that for the moment. Right, what about this then? So if we talked about the top teams, I think one of the only teams we haven't actually discussed is... Well, actually, we haven't even talked about Fnatic yet properly. We only touched on them a little bit about the return, right? So, Kold, is this legit? Is this Fnatic really going to contend for the title this split? Not next split, this split.
Ooh, contend for the title? I mean, they have a shot, absolutely. Like, they're playing much better. They actually, instead of playing the game or start playing the game at 20 minutes, they start from minute 1. So that's a good start, you know. They seem like they have a lot of good plans for level 1. They are probably the team in Europe with the most creative level 1s, where they always manage to get advantage. And it seems that the practice they had against their academy team with like playing early game for like a couple of days straight was working out well, because it's not that complicated to make a game plan. Like, I mean, it's pretty simple the first couple of minutes. Like if you know how your lane status are, who is winning your jungle matchup, blah blah blah. Like, and it seemed like that was missing for them. So now that they have a better structure in the early game, it seems to me that they're a team that has good players, and you can. It's painful. I thought for a second we had to count them out this year, but they always come back. Yeah. They always come back, you know. And
I counted them out when they were like 3-7 or something. I thought, come on, man,
yeah,
surely
same,
this is
man.
it.
I thought they looked absolutely terrible. I said that before as well. But I mean, they look like they're back. Sometimes you just need a little confidence in yourself and the things you're doing. And I think especially for Nemesis, it looked like the first couple of weeks it really hit him like a truck. The pressure of being on Fnatic, suddenly you're not Caps, you're Nemesis, and you need to realize that for a second, you know. So it takes some time. No flame intended.
I know, it was so funny.
I think he's a very talented player. So I mean, it looks much better. I think they look scary as a playoff team, because we know the star players they have, and they were, even though I feel like when you look at a team from a narrative point, it should be like more of a reckless focused team. I actually think the more I see them play, it looks like more of a team that will be centered around top lane. And I think Bwipo has shown that he plays well in the last couple of weeks. Like, at least when you give him some resources, he's a guy that can take over games. So yeah, I feel like more so now it looks like their weakness actually are in the bot lane. More so that it was meant up to be like the year of where Reckless needed to step up. He even said it in the start when they're struggling. Like, now it's my time to shine. Like, I have to be better. But I see some weakness in their bot side. But overall, they seem like a team now. You know, like before they were like just 5 players playing the game, and what are they doing? But now they're actually playing as a team. So they have that going for them compared to some of the other teams in the league.
Indeed. Yeah. Sadly, I actually didn't find those Reckless streams as informative as people implied, because obviously one of the things he kept stressing over and over again is he's not going to comment on his teammates, because he didn't want to like be seen as flaming them or whatever, because I don't know, maybe he mistakes all the other Fnatic fans as being 14-year-old girls. I don't know what it is, you know. Obviously, it's the nicest guy ever, and he just talks very slowly like this. Well, I couldn't play my teammates. Would be
how's your reckless impression?
Could be bad. Yeah, he just doesn't. He can't say a whole sentence out. Like, he even like each sentence takes like it's slowed down or something. It takes forever to talk, mate, because he's just thinking the whole time in his brain. PR. Right, say the right thing. Say the right thing. Say the right thing. What would the 14-year-old girl want to hear right here now? Yes, best guy ever. Say the right thing. Say the right thing. And here's the problem: he hasn't written a script. He's trying to come up with this shit on the fly. He's an indie carry. All they do is auto attack shit. Like, you know, he doesn't have to think. Now he's having to engage his brain. Fucking other shit's happening on the map. It's a whole new world for this guy. So I don't blame him. It's tough. You know, it's like trying to go into court and lie. You're having to make shit up and go, oh, fuck, keep track of all the lies I've said. Oh, fuck, what did I say before? Oh, I'm going to get caught. I shouldn't be lying in court, should I? On my stream. But anyway, I think you get the point. So anyway, I agree.
I didn't get the point. Can you continue?
Can you please elaborate?
Listen, son. Anyway, back on topic. Right, what do you actually think then? Similar question actually, but the other way around, Kold, about Broxah then. Because Broxah last year had what Jankos has this year. He had every fucking lane was winning, and they could pick anything, and they could win from any lane in theory, and they won every fucking game. And as a result, what did everyone call him? The best jungler. Of course, he's the god jungler. Then this split, admittedly, he's more recently had some pretty good games. He obviously had his own problems when the split started out. He was one of the people whose level seemed to drop. What do you think of Broxah this split?
He's has quite some evolution over the split. From not so good to slightly better.
He's just crawled out the ocean.
I mean, yeah. I mean, so I don't know the effect you get when you play with caps, obviously, but I mean, I see it in front of me. Like, obviously, he goes from maybe one of the best junglers in the world to one of the worst.
Second best Danish jungler in the LEC.
Exactly. So, I mean,
that was a fair way to phrase it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's. I can agree. For once, Thorin, I agree with you.
There we go.
Like, that was absolutely perfect. No,
I thought the reckless thing you said was pretty good, but
to be completely serious, it can be hard. Like, I don't know how it worked for him and Nemesis, and from the get go, and it's also like how was his responsibilities on the Fnatic of 2018? Like,
sure,
who is the guy leading the early game plays? As we see Caps, he's very dynamic in the way he plays, so he wants to all the time make action happen. And then, if that's the case, then maybe it's easy to be the follower. But now, maybe in the new iteration of Fnatic, he needs to be the guy leading the charge, and maybe he was not used to that. Or there are so many different variables that since you don't have the insight of what happened, then it's hard to completely know what. You can only assume things. But it looked to me like there was a clear disconnect on like how Broxah was playing and how Nemesis was playing. And in 2019 of League of Legends, mid and jungle are so important to be able to play the game. Like, you need to. It's impossible to play proper League of Legends if you don't have good mid and jungle synergy, because what happens in mid will translate into a side, and then you can't really play the game. So
we can all agree on that sentiment. I'll just leave the flame. It's just hidden in the background now. I don't need to say it, okay? I don't need to say it. It's just getting uncomfortable now. Anyway, I just agree with the sentiment, okay? I agree.
Yeah, so, I mean, I feel like as the split has progressed, they have been better together. We now see them doing things together, and then Broxah will look better. I think Broxah is kind of like myself in some ways, that I feel like he's the kind of guy to also play a lot for the lanes and want to do, like, it takes... the more synergy he gets with his teammates, the better he will look. He's not just some guy that will go out and like 1v9 the game, and like he's more of a guy that likes to follow structure and plans and make stuff happen that way around and make sure things are flowing. So yeah, I think he's a guy I respect. You have to respect the guy that goes to the World Finals regardless of what year it is. So I think he will be good for playoffs, and he has the experience to be one of the best in Europe in the jungle position. So, I mean, but maybe this year he'll be the second best Danish jungler in the league. But I mean, we'll see. We'll see in the playoffs.
So he made it sound so good there, and then what he did is accidentally, by giving real analysis, when he revealed that, maybe he's a bit like me, you know, he plays for the lanes, like more of a follower, you know. Well, he doesn't follow Mithy, does he? Who's he got shot calling for him? Fucking Hillesang.
Well, I'm not. You have to understand. I'm not being shot called. I'm getting micromanaged by.
Right.
Mithy.
Yeah.
You have to understand it.
My bad. Yeah.
Because you also have to understand from the.
You're like the Yorick clone or whatever, right? And he moves it while moving himself. It's hard, but that's, you know.
Because
you have the maiden running around with him.
Exactly.
From the time where he played in TSM, we all know that they have to micromanage their junglers. Exactly. So it's a follow up, you know, and we slowly see that now it's a built-in system and it's working, you know. So.
Exactly. It's a lot easier if the ward just moves around the map where you tell it to go instead of having to stay in one spot. You can only see one spot that way. It's garbage, yeah. Way better to just tell the ward to move. Exactly. All right then. Right, come on then, Veteran. What's your take on the Broxah angle?
Okay. So prior to that Worlds where they made it all the way to the finals, I remember getting a lot of flame for saying that I didn't think that the way Broxah jungled was actually like top tier, and a lot of people calling like the best jungler at the time. And I still think when I say that there are like those 5 junglers that perform really well in this really strong system, that I think is the way that you should play jungle right now.
He isn't in the 5 presumably.
He isn't in the 5. He doesn't do that. He doesn't do that at all. He's very he's incidentally there. when his laners need him, as opposed to that he is there by design. Unless you're talking about the really sort of early level 1, level 2 plays that Fnatic have been doing to try to steamroll ahead in an almost Vitality-esque fashion. I think a lot of the strength that is coming from Fnatic right now is, first off, 2 weeks ago when they were putting Reckless on TP champions only, and they were able to collapse for fights really easily that way, and they were catching a lot of teams off guard. This past weekend, Bwipo is being like a really, really strong strength, at least in the Misfits game. And then even in the other game where he wasn't really doing so hot, he was still like a really strong focal point for them. And Broxah plays really hard to where his advantages are, even at the detriment of himself, but also at the detriment of other lanes. This is not to say his lanes are like playing perfectly and like that he is like the problem with the team or something like this, but I don't view him in the same way that I view a jungler like Kold or a jungler like Memento. And this has been a consistent problem with Fnatic, and we had Youngbuck on the show who said that they didn't even like look at that portion of the game last year, and that they've only really started doing that this year. And whereas I think that he has really improved, this isn't something that I think we're going to see develop properly in Spring Split. Maybe in Summer Split they'll have all of this stuff figured out if they truly haven't really looked at this aspect of the game until now. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on Broxah. So I think most of the strength of that team has come from they've figured out that there are easy wave clear champions you can put Nemesis on, where he will just, if not get mid prio, he'll at least deny hard mid prio to his opposing mid lane, and then you basically have what you had with Caps on your team, which was permanent mid priority. And they're playing really strong collapse off of that. And yeah, like it's much better than what they were before, which was where they were just dying slowly and then dying really fast. Like,
sure,
it's much better. They have really strong players in every position, but they don't have the fundamentals of early game down. They have found a lot of good band-aids patch for patch for it. Like, Bwipo's the only one that was on the Conqueror Aatrox, for example, and before then you had the TP on Reckless. But eventually the band-aids won't be enough. I do still think they'll make playoffs. And the thing is, I do actually believe that this team will figure out the fundamentals by the time playoffs arrive, even if Broxah isn't going to be like one of the best junglers or something. I think as a team, they are going to be really strong coming into playoffs. And I still think of them as a top 3, not just because I want that list I made on Listen Loco to be 100% correct.
Okay.
But I genuinely do believe that they will develop to that point. That's a lot because I believe in Youngbuck. But yeah.
I mean, he has won the last 6 LCS playoffs. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's not bad, you know.
Average.
Decent. Yeah.
Those are rookie numbers.
Exactly. Not like that time Splyce made the final. That was a good one. Yeah. that was a fucking free one, wasn't it? You basically just walked over, handed him the trophy.
I remember I won one game and then I got a blackout. I won one game and then there was like I don't know, I don't remember the rest.
I think there was just a power outage and then Riot said like, whichever team's name is alphabetical order wins, and then G2 won. Yeah,
we played the final in Poland, so there was probably some issues with some yeah.
Oh,
yes,
yeah, now I see him.
Right, the problem was there. Kold actually just unfortunately had bad timing. Like he was doing a good job, because if you didn't know, he was trying to subtly set me up to like flame Poland or something, you know, which is like, you know, like again, that's just like sort of telling me, what do you think of Reckless or whatever? You know where I'm going to go on this one, so you know,
I really tried that, man. I really tried.
It's all right. You did all right.
Just creative.
What do you think about Bwipo, Odo?
Bwipo?
Yeah.
I think where top lane is right now, with the champs that are being played, kind of like suit him and the way he wants to play lane like an animal, pretty much. And I think like the champions that are being played now kind of have all the tools to allow him to play like that, while in the weeks before it wasn't really that much. Like now you see a lot of like Jarvan, Renekton, and all of this stuff, and I think these are kind of like champions that are really comfort for him and allow him to kind of play more loose and kind of allow him to overplay while not being at a significant risk. So I think, yeah, just the shift kind of puts him in a better position, and that's why his laning phase is like so much better now, just because of these champs, I think.
Because I think the difference between when Fnatic was initially starting to do really well and now is that you can't just completely ignore top lane like they were doing before. Like, not in the same way that Odo plays on an island. Bwipo was having to give up like 3 waves at a time because his team wasn't even bothering to help him fix them. His team was just playing really hard around bot, and then sometimes you would TP bot and not even get an assist. But you know, at least he was there. Like, but there was a lot of champions where you could do that on back then. Finally getting towards like Yorick, where you could ignore them, but they would get Trinity at a point and be unstoppable anyway. The difference is that now you can't really just ignore top, and now you do have stuff like the Aatrox that he's bringing out, where it can actually be really strong. That's almost entirely down to like the Conqueror rune being added. But the big
honestly,
test
I don't even think Conqueror Aatrox does that much. Like,
well, apparently it does
like,
in his hands. So
yeah, but I feel like if he had any other rune, it would do just as much.
okay, that's interesting because I haven't got my mind made up yet. But what I did see from Fnatic that did make me think that it wasn't just a band-aid that was eventually going to wear off is that they did manage to adapt to the fact that they can't just ignore top now. It wasn't just a one style that they found. They are able to bring these out week after week, so I'm much more confident about them going forward, that they can actually adapt, even if potentially conquer Aatrox.
He's playing better and better every week, so it's going to be interesting.
Okay. Right. I don't know how much we need to talk. Obviously, they're still technically in the playoff for us, so we'll talk about SK a bit, but Kold, give us your insights on Selfmade. What do you think of this guy? Do you not hear me? Hello? I think he's muted or something. Can everyone else hear me?
Just say he's really good. Just say he's like the best.
What happened?
I mean, I don't lie. I'll make jokes and that, but you know. Hey, Kold.
You cut out for like a second. I don't know.
It's all right. I was just asking what you think of Selfmade.
Oh, what do I think about Selfmade? I think he's like very, very talented. So at first I was like a little skeptical because last year so what happens when you're in the bottom of the EU LCS back then standings with you all? We got to scrim a lot of the national teams.
Oh right, yeah.
Explore a little bit of the young guns out there trying to get into the league, and Selfmade was one of those guys on Mad Lions back then. But when we scrimmed them back then, I didn't really feel like he was that great. Like he was hyped like as one of the upcoming junglers, but when we scrimmed him there, he was like nothing special. Like I thought he was like another one of the upcoming junglers that were just like average, maybe a little too hyped because of how they show their play in national leagues. But this year when we started playing against him in practice and on stage, what I've seen from him is that he's like super well-rounded player, surprisingly well-rounded, at least from like what is shown to us, because it's now we go into some of these things again that you hate. I know it, that junglers bring communication skills and leadership skills and all these things that we can't really judge because we don't have the insight. So I will just leave that out of it, and that can only be bonuses. But from gameplay wise, he seems like he's solid of the understanding of how to path with his champions. He understands jungle matchups pretty well. He is mechanically talented, so you see him not being afraid of making big plays on stage. He's able to pull these off in clutch moments, and he seems like he, at least from the outside, is like has pretty decent synergy with some of his laners, at least like from top lane that he has built over years. But so I mean, he looks like a jungler that will stay in the league for a while. Like he is here to stay. He's not one of those that just come out, one of those rookies that come in and just next year they're out. He seems like a guy that will stay here.
Okay. Right, more generally, maybe, Odoamne, what do you think of SK as a team? Because obviously, still technically in the playoff race. It's going to be tough, obviously, with the position they're in. But what have you thought of this squad?
I think they had a really good start, but that was kind of anticipated, given the fact that their core is, I think, like 4 people from Mad Lions or something like that.
Isn't it 3?
Yeah, it's 3.
Oh, and Dreams was the extra one or something like that.
Yeah, Dreams came from front. Or
Yeah, so it was kind of like when we practiced against them at first, they were kind of beating us every game just because they had this level of synergy established just from the fact that they were playing in the Spanish league. So I think they had a good start, but as the weeks went by, you could see that they're not really, they don't have the highest ceiling, and they kind of just capped on it. And I think the only star power they have in that team is just Selfmade, because from the at least the early games he was just smurfing every game. But as I watched them grow over the weeks, it wasn't really anything spectacular. I thought they were just average, kind of. Like when you look at them and you compare them to like Fnatic or OG, you can't really pick out anything that you would say they're better at than those two teams. So I know, I just thought they're really limited from the beginning, and they wouldn't like make it that far. But I think they kind of exceeded my expectations a bit, because I didn't expect them to win this many games. But I think I just kind of underestimated them a bit. But
what is Werlib like as a top laner? Because I remember him from back in the day when he was on Giants. He could play like Jax and Jax, and sometimes Jax as well if he could get Jax, you know. He's a pretty good Jax of Legends player, or whatever the fuck. Yeah,
I still get the same feeling that he can play only Jax, even though he's not playing Jax. But...
there we go. That's nice. Well done. Well executed. Yeah, that was the alley oop and the dunk. Yeah,
that's a cheeky. You set me up for it. But I mean, it's kind of hard to estimate how good he is, because he has kind of like the Kawachar syndrome, where his jungle seems to always be there for him.
Sure.
And that's the only play they can do. So I'm not sure how he can survive without this jungler. And
yeah,
I don't know. I feel like once you take Selfmade out of the equation, he's not really like, he's better, I think, than when he was in Giants 2 years ago or something like that. Like, he made some improvement, that's for sure. But I don't think he's like, top 5 or something like that. I think he's like middle of the pack. He's not bad for sure, but he's not like, there's nothing spectacular there. He's just Selfmade, kind of making everyone on that team
better jungler wins. Yeah,
exactly.
Well, wins half the time.
But Kold keeps saying that there's this communication and stuff. But when you see a man like Selfmade man, you see that there's like talent right there.
Of course, yeah.
Self-made man.
I mean, you know all about having a sick Polish guy come and gank your lane. Oh no, you didn't gank your lane. My bad. if only Jankos had thought
did that well.
It's true. He did
that Worlds, and you saw how many games he won. But that stopped at one point, and we lost.
Yeah. Then again, that was like some sort of outlier. Like that Worlds was like a tournament that doesn't exist in the same like dimensional time stream. That was like I went to an alternate universe where Forgiven's a fucking like Sivir main, and then like the whole thing didn't make any sense. The entire tournament.
Okay, the problem was Forgiven had to become a Sivir main because teams figured out somehow after 20 games at Worlds that were Caitlyn one tricks.
How do these teams? Tell you what, you got to give them credit. These Koreans do pick up on shit fast. Europeans are just going, he's just the best. There's nothing we can do. Yeah. And then they're just like, the Koreans go, maybe if we banned the Caitlyn, and then he goes, fuck you. You take away my Caitlyn. It's like,
fuck you, I go army.
Exactly, it's over at that point.
I'm coming for you.
Exactly. I did like the way he set that up, though, Kold. Like, he did set that whole storyline up. Like, he kept referencing the jungler the whole time. Even though I only asked him about Werlib, he kept referencing it. Have you noticed, right? Top laners complain about playing dog champions, but they want the actual jungle role to be an actual dog himself. He just follows you around. Like,
why do you think Odo likes Mowgli so much? I mean, I already knew it.
I mean, I don't like him. I think he's fine, but I just... No, but honestly, outside of the top thing, I just didn't see him, like... fuck up a game on LCS yet. I mean, except that game against G2 or whatever it was, whatever game you guys were talking about.
Sure.
But I haven't seen him like explode an early game and just straight up end, you know? Like from that point, I thought he was pretty consistent. Like he was consistently good in most of the games.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, the instances where I think that Mowgli did bad, it's not that he like necessarily inted, and it's stuff that I can put down to Vitality rather than him. Like when he played that game that they lost versus XL, for example, I think a large amount of that was because he, in Camille versus Sejuani, was still playing this style that they have of just sit on the enemy jungler, just trying to sit on Sejuani as Camille throughout all of the early spikes where he would actually be really useful snowballing his lanes. And then Sejuani hit the point where she is more useful than Camille, and Camille hasn't snowballed the lanes enough, and I think they lose the game off that. So it's like, that's not necessarily criticism at him, because Vitality would do this with any jungler. And I think Mowgli is an upgrade to all the other junglers that they have had so far. So I agree he has never like inted games, but I think the way that they play, there's definitely been better ways for him to play out the early game. But he never like outright ints it or something.
We should just make this segment like the segment of showing some love for the junglers, because I mean, if you don't show appreciation and love for your jungler, like how are you supposed? How
exactly
do you actually think they will help you? Like
exactly, if you're abusive in your relationships, don't be surprised if you end up on your own.
Yeah.
If you're just like, why am I alone on fucking Valentine's Day?
You know, the best relationships are the relationships where they both feel like they're listened to. You know. So
yes.
Just. To all of you guys out there, that's how you should treat it.
Yeah, that's the secret also to jungling, by the way. A jungler's job is to tell the other two lanes, listen, I understand you need ganks. I understand your lane is fucked, but I have to help this guy now. And once I've helped him, then I can come and help you. And if I help him, it helps you and it helps all of us. So let's all agree to help each other and not blame anyone, because again, nobody's at fault here.
It reminds me of a sinking ship, you know, and you have two of your best friends and you can only save one, you know?
Yes.
It's an impossible decision.
Exactly.
It's absolutely impossible. But and imagine I have to deal with that every single day. Every day. I'm in this
But it's true, you know.
Oh no!
I have a funny episode with Xerxes, because obviously, like, there are some points where both top and bot are getting fucked, you know.
Sure.
And the obvious choice is you abandon the top lane and you save your bot lane because it has more impact. But the problem is, like, I get abandoned, I will die, and then I say, don't come and help me. I am useless. Help bot. And then what?
And that tricks him. He gets guilty.
Yes, and then he gets guilty and he comes top and tries to save me and explodes the game, and then the game is lost.
Listen, if anyone out there in the world doesn't know, I tell everyone this all the time. It works the same way at the pro level that it does in solo queue. If you start losing your lane, and my job is to get the other lane ahead, you're fucked. Sorry, like, just try not to lose as hard as possible.
Yeah, exactly. That's the whole thing.
You know,
Thorin, like, I didn't know you had this much knowledge about League. Like,
just pick up the odd things here and there.
You play solo queue or what? I feel like you're playing solo queue sometimes.
Yeah.
I feel like you could definitely make a podcast about this topic, Thorin, and teach the young guns how it's supposed to be.
Yeah. To be fair, you have to understand, Kold did spend a bit of time around your Yamato cannon, so, you know, he has a hard time differentiating, you know, who does have game knowledge, who doesn't, so fair enough. You know. I actually did notice, by the way, I will say this, by the way, I actually have love for Yamato cannon. Like, I like kind of he's got his own charm, he does things his own way, but I did hear that he apparently flamed Loco Doco and said, like, he thought his game knowledge was shit, and all I thought to myself was, you know that gif from the third Star Wars prequel where the Emperor just goes, ha, ironic. So that's all I thought was just that little gif. You know,
I'm thinking of the Spider-Man like picture where the two Spider-Man
looking at each other.
Yeah,
exactly. That someone out there with MS Paint skills, just get that Spider-Man thing and have Yamato Cannon and Loco Doco saying, you know nothing about game mechanics or whatever, like, and pointing at each other, and then, you know, who knows who can know if they know or not? Maybe they tell the teams all the right things to do, but the players do it wrong. I don't know. We can't know.
While the Danish jungler is talking about jungle appreciation, I appreciate top laners as well, and I appreciate everything Odo did to allow Febiven to get ahead at HGK 2016.
We need to cut it here. Foreign, it's getting too positive. Like,
it is, isn't it?
It can't be a foreign show and be this positive. Like, we need to show some.
This video was supported by Dean Tanglis, Andreas, Snazore Westerlund, James Harding, NateDOhDoubleG, OllieJ, Tobias Bernasconi, Travis Greb, Tristan Jones, Daniel Olivar, Jiangheng Lu, and special thanks, as always, goes out to Jerky's Minion, one of my OGs. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my content? Maybe you want to ask me a question. I have a monthly AMA. Perhaps you want teasers for who the next guests are on my upcoming talk shows. Maybe you want to be part of my monthly discussion where my top patrons talk to me. Well, put your money where your mouth is and join the Scrilluminati today at the description box link for Patreon.